Since it is now 8:35, I'm going to go ahead and just open with the Port Facilities Corporation meeting, the special meeting. Roll call, please.
Chairman Ted O'Rourke.
Here.
Vice Chairman Albert Shannon.
Here.
Director Elizabeth Beaton. Here. Director Richard DeVries.
Here.
Director Doug Gottnich.
Present.
Director Brian Maxwell.
Here.
Director Harry Maxwell.
Here.
Director Todd Sullivan is absent today. Director Jim Yarbrough.
Here.
And we have Roger Reese and Tony Brown.
Thank you. I declare we have a quorum. Any conflicts? Hearing none, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting?
So moved.
Second. Any remarks? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, so ordered. General business, C1, discuss and consider approval operating agreement between the Galveston Port Facilities Corporation and Magical Cruise Company Limited, DBA Disney Cruise Line for cruise operations at Terminal Number 2. Roger?
Yes, after probably, I guess we've been working on this. Their contract expires in November, so in November of this year. And so we've been working for probably the last 6 months on, they came to us initially and wanted a longer term agreement once the Royal Caribbean leaves Cruise Terminal 2. And so we've been negotiating back and forth with them. Basically, my stance was that we were more than happy. We loved having Disney here. But in order for us to enter into a longer term agreement, they needed to add calls here at the port. And they agreed to basically go from, I think they're at 12 right now, up to 26 turns over the next 5 years. Excuse me?
They were at 8.
They were at 8, right? Yeah. They got 12 this year, right? Yeah. And so, they want to continue, and they stopped short of obligating a year-round ship here. But I do know that they have 3 new ships that are being built here. So I think it's a good chance, and we have as good a chance as any, I think, to get a full-time ship here. And through all those negotiations, we've been very careful about leaving uninterrupted time for another cruise line that we don't know who it is, but another cruise line that can come in and take that terminal for a full year also. So we've negotiated around it, because one of the things that Carnival has is they have the first refusal. What is that? First right of refusal on the Saturdays at Terminal 2 now. So they have all of Terminal 1, and then they also occasionally every other Saturday, I think it is, they bring in another ship into Cruise Terminal 2 now. And so they have a rights to Saturdays. We've given the rights to in this contract. We've given the rights to Disney for Cruise Terminal 2 for Saturdays and Sundays, and any time during the week. Typically what'll happen is if there's not a big waiting line for, as we all know, for cruise ships coming in and leaving from during the week. So I think we're good there. So one thing we did directly say to them is that we have to have Fridays uninterrupted, so we have a clean Friday all the way in Cruise Terminal 2 for the future. And then these are the rights of refusal. Royal Caribbean also, in the contract that we just completed with them, or the MOU we just completed with them, they have the right to a Sunday in 2026. So what they're looking forward is to, once they've got the new terminal up and running and they've seasoned their new terminal, that approximately 3 years after that, they're looking for additional rights on Cruise Terminal 2 to bring another ship in. So we've given those rights, but what happens? We've got a lag time. Disney are required to give us 24 months notice if they want to schedule at Cruise Terminal 2, and then Royal Caribbean has 18 months. So we've got the notice period staggered so that if one of them gives notice, then we'll know by the time the next 6 months rolls around that it's already taken. So that's kind of where Cruise Terminal 2 sits right now. We do have another cruise line coming in here the first week of January to discuss the Cruise Terminal 2. But we have left open on Fridays. One of the other things here is in the interest of, from our side, the demand is going to be increasing, we believe, over the next few years. And so we've also been able to renegotiate our tariff rates to Disney. So we're now running Disney where it was a negotiated rate of about $4 and I think it was 13 cents or 15 cents.
15 cents.
$4.15 is what it was. So we've taken it up to $7.50, which is our current tariff. So that will bring in more money, obviously, $3 per passenger both ways additional. So, that's part of the contract. We also indicated, listen, we're going to full tariff. They didn't balk at that at all. So I think
the minimum guarantee.
Yeah, and we have the minimum guarantee went up from
760 to 1.1
million. So we're guaranteed 1.1 million. Just no matter what happens, if they never ring ship here, we're guaranteed that from them. So that's what this contract is right here. All I'm asking for today is basically the rights from the board to negotiate the balance of the contract. We are meeting overnight. Tony had mentioned this morning. We got one more comment overnight from their attorney. But we're hoping tomorrow, the next day, to basically issue a press release that we signed the contract. So what I'm asking for is the right to go ahead and negotiate the final part of this contract, which we believe we're there. I mean, we were down to 1 point last night, and then we'll be executing the contract. The contract technically gets backdated because the contract started November 1. So anything that comes out of this contract goes retroactively back to November 1. That's the date.
Roger, are these minimum cruise dates? I mean, so if they wanted to add cruise dates, they could.
They have plenty of
These are
room
the
to add
minimum.
them. Yes.
These are the minimum.
They have plenty of room to add them. And then, I think that, eventually, now I do know that they're negotiating right now for a second terminal over at Port Canaveral. Because they have one terminal that's basically a Disney terminal, and they've asked for another one. So that could possibly affect our ability to get a year-round ship here. My personal opinion is that we're in a great position, and I think whether it's Disney or another cruise line or something, we'll be able to really fill Cruise Terminal 2 up.
I noticed that we addressed Terminal 3 in this agreement. Is that something that has to get approved by Royal Caribbean too, or is that?
No, what it is it's a contingency, because when we were negotiating this contract, we had not yet completed our contract with Royal. And technically, we still have one more step with Royal to complete, which would be the final land lease, and then the inclusion of the of the operating agreement and the development agreement, which is really what the MOU is about. Was the operating agreement and the development agreement will then become an addendum to the lease, to the land lease. So that caveat is in there in case that deal. They can't get this deal if the contract doesn't go forward with Royal, because this is all contingent on Royal leaving Cruise Terminal 2.
Okay.
Basically, their rights of first refusal, the corresponding rights between the various cruise lines. There's Section 1.03 has two scenarios. One is prior to completion of CP3, and then the other part deals with after completion of CP3. Here's how it works. So that's what you're probably looking at.
Question, Roger, on ship services.
Yes.
On page 7, it says that the operator, provided on ski going pilot terminal, but it says the corporation pays for these services. So I thought this was only with Carnival. Are we going to start?
No, we were doing it with Disney.
You were doing it with
It
Disney?
was Disney also.
So is there no fee in here for doing it?
There is isn't there an administrative fee in there? I mean, we have had these conversations about them having the ability to change that, and in most other ports they do change it. I mean, in other words, they're billed direct
Yeah.
Right now, in the interest of time, we're gonna continue processing those items, because what happens is, we've discussed this before, is the port gets billed for those services, and then we bill them, and it's a pass-through. And so, I can't remember, do we not have any kind of administrative?
I didn't see one.
Yeah, there's an administration fee charge. It's basically
Just not-
1%. It's not in there, but it's in the Schedule 3.04 that's referenced. It's not in.
We don't have it here.
No.
1%? That's it. I mean, yeah,
Mark could probably tell us what the cost is of that. Could you, Mark?
Not off the top of my head, I could not.
What the cost of what is?
Well, whether or not these services are gonna be on the negative side, or whether they're gonna break even, or we're gonna.
Well, we won't be on the negative side, because we have the ability to true up at the end of the year if, in fact, the prices we start out at the beginning of the year change during the year. And the 3.04, which, we did it, but the 3.04 has provisions in there for a true up that allows us to bring if the rates change during the year.
So the worst you can do is break even.
But
Well, plus or make 1%.
Right.
I would like for this, but see, this shows up now in revenue.
It does.
And it's not revenue. I mean, it really isn't. So,
Well, it shows up. The gross shows up in revenue than the others. So
yeah, and we're gonna get 1%. I mean, I think that's pretty light for doing the lifting, paying the bills and then turn around and billing them.
Waiting for our money.
Waiting.
Yeah, I know.
And then taking the chance something gets slides through. So we have to, I would just
Okay, well, we can
take a look at it.
We'll definitely go back. I mean, because we're at the nth hour, but I don't think that's a deal killer.
No,
by any means.
and who in the old days? I mean, ships agents used to handle this stuff for them. Is
And
that
they
not
do.
no longer the?
They do for other cruise lines.
Okay.
It's just for some reason here, unbeknownst to me, we have done this in the past.
That's just a question. I
Yeah.
have.
What's that?
We're using our money.
I don't think that they'll have an issue, because when we first started this contract, we were talking about going direct to them, and as negotiated, we did not change it. It's exactly the same. I mean, I think that I agree with you. We should let them do their business direct.
Yeah, we're starting out like an agent.
Mm-hmm. And it distorts our financial statement too.
It does it that way. It does. I mean, actually, from an accounting standpoint, doesn't it? You're supposed to show the revenues and then the expenses.
No.
I never understood when they first did it.
Now, if you were a ships agent, you wouldn't. It's not revenue. It just goes in and out. You just pick up your agency fee. So I would think if we're acting like an agent, our fee would be the admin fee that you're going to charge. It wouldn't be the pass-through. But there's something to.
Well, we talked about that
Yeah.
in the new ERP systems, doing some special reporting in there, because I mean, one of the things, and then I think we've discussed this before, is that do we get into restatement or something like that with previous years if we do that?
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like the best option would be to get out of this altogether, let them handle their own.
I agree.
But if we're going to handle it, I would suggest it in changing the accounting method.
Who's their agent in other ports, Roger?
Metro, I think.
Do they have a presence here at all?
Yes.
Metro does, yeah.
They run all
So
over.
is Disney and Carnival, I mean, are they down in where you came from before? Do they have a ship down here? Did they pay their own?
Yes.
So, okay. So why just curious why we would just say pay your own here?
Because he inherited it. Because it was put in place.
Okay.
It was put in place before he got here. Not only for Disney, but
This
for
would be the time to have those discussions to see if they could.
Well, we've had the discussion.
How much money is in this arena? How much they pay for? How much money is flowing through?
Last year we had about $5 or $6 million in revenue from ship services.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have that information here.
Carnival
how much it is.
and-
It's Carnival and
Mark.
Disney does that.
Yeah, and it's a pretty big piece of the pie when you include it in our pie chart. I agree it shouldn't be in the pie chart. But Harry's right. We ought to quit doing this.
Well, and I understand.
I brought it up before I was on the
And
board.
I don't know, I don't see why any of the lines would object to amending our contracts with them to make that change, even when we're not otherwise renegotiating.
Because really,
Go
at the
back
end
to
of the
today.
let me ask you this, really at the end of the day, looking at it from the ground level, it wouldn't cost them any more, right? Because supposedly,
No.
Cost them less.
supposedly this is the pass-through, right?
I don't know, our
Right,
margin's
they
only
can
1%, I don't know
Yeah.
what the margin is on Metro, but it's probably more.
I'm saying it could cost them
Because they
less.
have to pay an agent, and they're not really paying us as an agent.
Let's
Yeah.
do two
We can go
things.
back.
Let's do two things,
We haven't
Roger,
done this
then.
contract.
Let's one, see if we can get them to do it in the traditional way, we get their agent to handle these calls.
They're not paying full service on it.
If that's not possible, then let's see if we can get the administrative fee of it, a minimum, if it's just a small thing, I don't want 1% of $2,000.
Sure.
A minimum charge with a 1% after the minimum or something. And let's try to get out of it if we can. If it's, I mean,
No problem. I have no
we don't
problem
want
with that.
We want Disney here.
They'll save our county people a lot of trouble too.
I had a couple questions.
Sure.
Working on the assumption that Terminal 3 is going to get built and put in place. This is one of the steps toward backfilling Terminal 2 with Disney, with basically double the activity over the time. All these cruise ships want to come in on weekend type stuff. Is there any way to incentivize it? Maybe not Disney, they're hard, they're big boys in the game, but is there any way to incentivize or get higher rates on the weekends where we can encourage cruise ships to come in during the other parts of the week, which might help our hotels fill up? I mean, there's not a hotel room available Friday, Saturday, or Sunday around here in the summer, but there is hotels available Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. Is there any way we can incentivize folks to use our terminals?
Well, you know, it's all
Another
depends
part
on
of
their
the week.
markets. You know, I think Disney does come in one, like Wednesday. Don't we have on Fridays?
They were here Friday last.
It's this Friday.
Well, that's a regular call.
I mean,
It may not do, but the smaller guys that have maybe more flexibility and, I don't know, just trying to.
we can
figure a way
try. I mean, I agree
to
with you.
keep
I mean,
our
you build these
business going.
beautiful buildings
Yeah.
and then they aren't used during the week.
And we can capture further.
Kinda like
things on the
stadiums.
island.
What's that?
Kind of like stadiums.
Yeah.
Churches. And
I
churches.
mean, we certainly can attempt to, and we're
Use them
tempted
once
to
a
all
year.
the time. I mean, the incentive to them is going to be reduced cost. That's going to be the incentive to them. But the bottom line is, it is new revenues to us.
Did you have something else?
I'm not good at all the matrix that you have going, but Cruise Terminal 3 gets up, Royal moves to the big new terminal. I know they've got, as you say, they want options to come back to 2 once they season their situation. If Royal doesn't use Terminal 2 at all, we got Disney plugging into 2 with this contract.
Right.
What else do you have in the works for Terminal 2 in the
Well, as I said,
Terminal 3 world?
we have another cruise line, one of the top 3 cruise lines coming in the first week. They were going to try to come in actually this week. It got moved back to the first week of January to open that up. I mean, Ted and I just came back from the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association meeting. We've talked to 2 or 3 other cruise lines there. Princess being one of them. Princess is still not. Princess's market is retired people, is retired market, and that's what they go after. And at this point in time, they have not seen that the Houston market is a lucrative. Not saying there's not retired people here, but it's not a lucrative market.
Much younger
for
than
them
the
to
Florida
come back.
market.
To come back here. I mean, we are always putting this forward out in front of people. I mean, it's these meetings is where we meet. You can. It's all well and good to go and present things, but unless you're talking to decision makers, and that's really where we were down at the Caribbean Association meeting. But we're all the time pushing. I mean, immediately,
So
with.
what you're saying is we're going to fill it up. There's enough demand. We're going to fill that terminal up with activity.
I think we will.
Yeah.
Oh, I think we will.
What's the fiscal impact change between the current contract we have with Disney and this one?
It's
If they-
2 things. If the minimum guarantee is
Forget the minimum. If they max out with their 26, how much more money are we going to get when we have this contract in place versus the and I had 450 a pass through and all those numbers?
I don't know if we ran, did we run that, Mark?
We did run that when we were looking at it. We did not bring it with us.
I mean, I've got a copy, and I've got a copy of the one you had asked me about for Cruise Terminal 3, the impact of that. When we did run this, we were going.
The model with Cruise Terminal 3 is great because it's starting to do another week or two. So that's a real plus for us.
Well, the same thing with Disney, because Disney
And they're gonna start that too.
retroactively gets billed.
I would just say, as we bring these things in the future, some kind of fiscal impact would be, especially when we're
At the end game.
comparing old and new, we can kind of see this, this is a much better contract because we've got current rates versus stale rates. And,
Right.
just,
I
Well,
agree.
the minimum guarantee increase is 42%.
yeah.
And hopefully the revenues will exceed the minimum guarantee.
It always has.
So we'll do a little better.
You know,
So-
I want to make one comment on that though, because I'm going to piggyback what you were saying. And I mentioned it to you about on the weekends. We're going to get in the year 2025, I guess, is when we'll get to the point where we have the 26 ships, correct?
Right.
It's going to go up. 26 ships leaves us with 26 other Sundays available. The point being, do you think we'll be able? And I think you might be able to do it. But do you think we'll be able to get the other big player or another big player in there to come in that may want just 26 calls instead of 52 calls?
Well, I mean,
I'm just saying that's a good
Problem with that.
I understand that question, but
I'm saying-
I can't tell you what's going to happen in 2025.
Well, the other thing is,
Well,
right
I
here-
expect a lot out of you.
Right.
Though. Well, I don't understand. But
What I can say is we certainly are going to try.
Yeah, right. But then we're still going to have Friday cleared up.
We got
in case
Friday 100% clear for 52 weeks.
Okay, that's the main thing.
And that's what I was working on, is to at least have that one weekend day that we knew that there was nobody had any options, nobody had any rights, and
Because on the 4 and 5 day cruises, they're coming on Mondays and Thursdays. So this way, you would at least, if you go out to market it, you'll be able to market Friday for the 52 week, and then you still have 26 weeks left for
Right.
Terminal 2.
and we'll have.
And
But you don't know
ultimately,
what
we have
those
a
26
2-year.
weeks are because they got 18 months.
We do know. We know what they're
18
doing
months.
now. They're basically winter months. So they came in in November and will leave in February on this round, and that will go through April when they get to 26 ships.
But they can change it, right?
Yes, they can.
So then
By
they
then, they're
gotta
probably
give
gonna
you
wanna-
18 months in
They
advance.
got to give us 24 months.
24 months, okay.
By the end of 5 years, they're probably going to want it year round anyway.
That's what we're hoping, and that's what they kind of insinuated. But insinuation you can't take it back. So I mean, there's a certain amount of this that you have to rely on the lead periods. The 2-year period, the 18-month
Sorry,
period,
Rich.
to
Go ahead.
have them make the reservations.
Go ahead, Mayor.
I thought Richard had something.
Oh, go ahead, finish up.
Go ahead, finish.
Mine's on a different area.
Oh.
I'm not sure how to say this. I'm not objective. I may be Pollyanna, and I don't want to be arrogant. But my feeling is we've negotiated from kind of a bended knee for a long time around here. And we're starting to get the right size of the bat in our hand. I don't want to get greedy and I don't want to get arrogant about it, but there ain't no other choice for cruises in this area. We're it. Got a monopoly. Let's just negotiate what we've always had and the way we've always done things, because that's the way we've done it. We may have done it because we didn't have any choice, or we were trying to just track business. So gradually get the culture and the mindset that we need to negotiate from a little better strength position, that push the envelope a little bit and see. There'll be pushback at some point.
Right.
You know how to do that, but I don't want to squeeze every dollar out of the turnip. Got to leave a little juice on the table.
It's gotta be a
Understand that,
balance.
yeah. But just make sure we press the envelope a little bit and see how far we can push to still have everybody
Right.
feeling good about the deal.
Well, and I feel like we've addressed that here,
Good.
mainly because we've gone to straight tariff, which has always been negotiated with Disney. We haven't negotiated the fees there and the pass through, but we've also basically said to them, we're not going to give you any kind of rights of first refusal with 12 calls. I mean that's the bang that we have right now is you've got to increase your calls and you've got to start paying us more. so I think we started that. And we're doing that right now also with Royal.
That's what we need.
Because Royal is going to be paying full tariff for the next 2.5 years. While, and that's incrementally over that period, it's over $4 million. We talk about 2.75 years at an increase of $3 and something per passenger over that time period going both ways. So we, and that's really in our mind, and within the numbers that we have, in our mind, that's what really helps us. I mean, I think theoretically this transaction with Royal could be zero net out-of-pocket cost for us because of the increase in that money
We're
going
going to use
forward.
their money to build the
Right.
improvements we've got to do.
Right. And then
Just keep that in mind,
I do.
good.
Mr. DeVries.
Minor point, I thought it might be a good time to address it. My position here is to look out what's best for the port and the board. And, the contract looks like it. When I'm off this board, the best thing in my position is going to be look out for Galveston, as Jim says, with the hotels. One of my peeves has always been that our terminal, I used to say it looked like a hospital, but hospitals have more color than we have in our terminals now. And I've always been told that, Disney or Caribbean or Carnival doesn't want signage in there. I don't know if it's a time to do it. There's nothing addressed in here on the signage or promotion and stuff. But, I don't know why we can't have a flashboard in there with Galveston sites and stuff like that. Or if we can do it, we're still not doing it. You look at this picture here in the administrative report back in the director's report, and there's nothing but white walls and black chairs in there. Looks pretty boring, I would think.
It's a good project for the park board.
Whoever.
Yeah, that's
But
exactly right.
I think Galveston can be promoted in there with flashing signs and posters and such. And
Is there
I don't know
some-
if that's the case that we can't do it.
Is there some taboo or?
Well, I'm
industry
just saying that
pushback?
they don't want it at all. I've been through this in my, for the last 5 years of my life, trying to get the cruise lines to allow local signage in there, and they don't want to because it's technically when a cruise comes in, we clear that terminal, and then it becomes their terminal. We open it up to them. They bring all their own people in, and we have never, at least, we have never been, especially Disney, because Disney, has a trademark that's all over the world, and if they don't exclusively own, I've only ever seen one terminal that they actually, it's their terminal. Mickey's everywhere, Minnie's everywhere, and all that kind of stuff. They do not want you to put advertising in there.
We do.
Life-size
they got
cutouts.
goofy.
We got those life-size cutouts of Teddy we're going to put in there. That's nice. Shaking group, welcome to Galveston.
I'd love to see that, and I don't have a problem with
Security
having
there.
that.
Mr. Campbell.
I've never
You
ever
remove this
seen
man?
them allowed in any terminal.
He's gotta vote first.
And, Royal, probably will have their terminal. I'm sure will be their new terminal will be customized with their logos everywhere. Could be signage on the outside of that terminal. They're building it. It's their money. But I would love to be able to put. We never were able to do it.
Let me ask you
We
a
never able to put
question.
out.
You say Royal, will our contract address and allow them to do that?
Well, yeah, sure, because they're building it. It's going to be their building.
Don't have the
It'll
anchor
be
on
their
the side.
building for 60 years.
If you see their
I
building.
realize that, but will there be contract language that specifically allows that? This contract doesn't address it at all. That's what I'm saying. Is it going to be void, or is it going to be in there that they have the rights to do that?
Well, they'll have to go through the permitting process and everything else with the city, but other than that, yeah, it's already discussed in the MOU for signage.
That reminds me of going into a casino. They don't want you spending any money anywhere else except in their casino.
Well, we
The
did.
cruise lines are just like, they don't want you spending money in hotels. They want you to save all your money to spend on their ships.
Especially Disney, they're vertically integrated. They don't want you to spend money on anything. It's not
Well,
Disney.
and I will tell you that the cruise lines are going to that model. The cruise lines are going to a vertically integrated model. They already own their own ships, and now they're getting ready to own their own terminals, their own port of calls. They're doing it all through the Caribbean. They're building their own port of calls on their own islands. And so that's what you're saying, Brian, is exactly right. They're going to be vertically integrated, So they're going to control the passenger. We tried at Cruise Terminal 1, I talked to Carnival about, can we, on a couple of those walls in there, can we put a beach scene or something like that on? Because what we did do was, I thought it was pretty drab in there, so we put all new LED lighting in there because we were under budget on that terminal. So now the Cruise Terminal 1 has all new bright lights in there, but all that does is accentuate there's nothing on that wall, and
Well, at least a minimum, if we're not advertising particular, we ought to be able to work and have at least art of local buildings and local histories and stuff of that nature.
Yeah,
Work
like
with
a
our-
mural that they
Yeah,
approved.
work with our
Something
arts
that they-
commission, and local artists can do some stuff in there to show their work off.
You think we could talk to our friend Michael McGarry and see if he might have some ideas with Clea, how he could help us approach the cruise lines with our dilemma?
I don't see it as a dilemma myself. I mean, it'd be nice,
Well, I mean-
but I mean,
No, I'm just saying, to enhance it for the public sector to be able to feel and to see what Richard's talking about is spoofing it up and having I like the idea of what Elizabeth just said. You could have some rules in there. It doesn't have to say, go to this location or whatever, but just show a little something of the history of
Just some
Galveston and the
color.
beauty,
Murals of the port.
the beauty,
Character of the city.
Of
the
the
beautiful,
country.
the beauties of the city. I mean, I was just thinking if
Why don't we just ask staff to come back with some
yeah, I mean,
ideas and
we'll
what's
glad. I
possible?
mean, we'll do.
Because
I've been down this
it's
road
pretty sterile
several
environment
times,
over there.
and
they're just real resistant.
they just want people in it. They don't want people sitting around those terminals. I mean, they get judged on Cruise Critic and on the social media by how long a passenger has to wait. If you see many negative remarks about Galveston, it is the traffic coming in, and then it is waiting in line to go through terminals. And that's the issue. Let me put it this way. We'll be glad to have a discussion with them. If there's a way, because I even wanted to paint a mural in Cruise Terminal 1 because that wall was just, they don't have any interest in having a hospitable terminal, because their whole idea, and I will tell you the other thing is with the new cruise terminal at the Royals building, there will be facial recognition software there, so that when you come in that terminal, you aren't going to have to stop for anything, because the computers are going to see your face and they're going to recognize who you are, and they're going to know that you are a paid customer on the cruise line, and then they're going to shuffle you right on through. And I think Michael Bailey said it was an hour less. They're doing this in Miami now. And it's sad because you build a $100 million building, and all you do is, all you're doing really is building a front door to back door,
just a hallway, just a corridor to get to the ship.
And we make money doing it. So I think that you don't want to
Just to get out of the weather while you're being processed.
Right. And that's one of the issues we have here too, is from our off-site parking is they let their customers off.
That's right.
You brought up something, Roger, that
Oh, I see.
I think maybe a coming step. You mentioned that Royal and Disney are creating their world or their environment down the islands and stuff.
And Carnival, all of them are doing it.
As we get our master plan final, I sure wouldn't mind at least having discussions and maybe even RFP to see what's out there. I have no problem with Royal or Disney taking over the management of all that stuff over there. Let them spend some money to really make it a destination, and as long as we report and the city gets our share.
Right. Sure.
But, instead of us managing it and not really being in that business, maybe turn it over to it.
You're talking about Cruise Terminal 2.
I'm talking about the whole
We got it.
east end of the port operation as far as the cruise tourist side.
Right.
Yeah, some arrangements to get them to invest in
We've had
their
some offers.
hotels and their stuff.
We've had some offers of somebody coming in saying we'll just take the terminal and we'll fill it up. We'll pay you a lease. I mean, it is 10% of what we were making.
Yeah,
what they had offered.
Well, and I'm
We
talking
got
about
down-
Disney coming in and managing the retail and the shops and not saying we want to do that, but we want to look at that as an option as opposed to doing it the more traditional way where we're a landlord.
And I will say to you that when Royal Caribbean was here, when we did the signing of the MOU, I took them around the island and they are investors also. And so I think that they were impressed with this island, and I believe that there's some thought about, do we buy other pieces of land? Do we put our own hotels up? Because the hotels basically on the weekends, as you know, are full, and they'll tell you we're full, and so you don't have a lot of buy-in from the cruise line, from the local hospitality population to really want to go to the cruise lines, because they get heavily discounted if you try to book it through. So one of the things is if they come in the day bond, they'd love to have their own hotel.
Well, I mean, just for example, we've got Doug Ford sitting there. I mentioned it to you, Jim. He comes to every meeting that's what they do with P&D. They've done some business for us before.
This is a gentleman that comes in every meeting.
Flies in.
Where are you flying from?
Atlanta.
Flies in from Atlanta.
And Wade here's in Houston.
And he's in Houston, and they're interested in exactly, I think they're interested in exactly what you're talking about. Finding an area where they can go in and do that commercial development like we talked about, maybe on 14 and stuff like that. So there's people that are interested in doing that, but then you look at that side of it, but you got to make sure you're going to be able to get the return that we would get if we do it on our own.
Yeah, no,
I've listened to Roger's analysis of doing it yourself. You can make a lot more money on different things. So, and he's proven that already with a lot of the stuff that's going on with the parking, going out and doing some of that stuff. But
and I would say to you,
there's an interest out there on just exactly what you're talking about. It just shows you that this gentleman flies in every meeting just to be here. And I know he's done a little bit of. What did you do for us with P&D?
Most recently, CT1.
You did do some work.
Was the expansion there.
The engineering.
Yeah.
I would say to you, one of the things that and I think this is going to come out of the master plan too. We have, by the way, we have a master plan workshop the 14th, and then
next month.
Yeah, next month. And I think one of the things I've seen some preliminary numbers from the master plan, and I would suggest that really, when we look at the cruise business, we don't make a lot of money off of the cruise and the cruise terminals. It's all in the parking. It's all in the parking. I say all. 90% or 85% of the revenues that we bring to the bottom line as a result of the cruise business is the parking.
Oh, absolutely.
So what happens when everybody starts using mass transportation or Uber, or they say that's the future.
Right.
So we've built an industry for ourselves here where all we get is we only profit if people bring their cars.
Well,
And so if the culture changes in 10 years, which they say it's going to, where does that leave us?
Well, it's an interesting question, because I asked that question. We had a group who was in here a couple of months ago about they wanted to basically build, I think I mentioned this to the board, they wanted to build a cruise terminal, operate the cruise terminal, and by discounting the future cash flows from the parking deck, they would write us a check which we could use for future development. And I posed that question to them, and I said, what and more so is the autonomous vehicles. Mm-hmm. So you come to the port, the car drives you there, you get off, and the car goes back home. Okay. And well, you laugh at me, but that's what's happening. That's what you're reading about.
I need one of those.
Right.
So what do you need a parking deck for?
Or your car leaves and goes somewhere on the mainland where it can be left very inexpensively, and then it comes and picks you up when you get back.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because these guys are investor based, and they don't see this as an issue. So they're the ones that are coming to us and saying, hey, we'll give you a certain amount of money if you'll just basically build the cruise terminal, let us operate it, and for 20 years or for 30 years, so from an investor standpoint, you think they would be the most squeamish because they're talking, $40 or $50 million out of pocket, and yet they don't see this as an issue. They don't see that our society as a whole is going to buy into that.
They're really going to separate the Americans from our cars, all that. So
They'd like to think that they are.
I have a question about the way this right of first refusal and priority works. So.
Which page is that, the first page?
Well, it's just generally speaking. Tony and Roger, y'all can probably answer this for me. So, Royal and Carnival have first dibs on Cruise Terminal 2, right?
With a 2-year notice or an 18-month notice.
Okay.
Right.
And so, if Disney wants to come in, it's subject to the preference for the other cruise lines who are here first,
Except on Sundays.
except on Sundays.
Right. They have Sundays.
So, what if Royal or Carnival says, yeah, we're gonna need it, we wanna reserve it, so you don't book anybody else there. And then time goes by and they say, oops, we thought we were gonna need it, but we don't. Do they have to pay us?
Well, I mean,
in our contracts with them, are they obligated to give us the revenue? I mean, we're not gonna get the parking if they cancel, and yet they will have prevented a competing cruise line from having access to the terminal. So,
Well,
how do we prevent that?
well, I think how we prevent that is that at the time that all they have is a right.
Mhm.
So, at the time that they exercise that right, then that's when we know the terms of what they're wanting to exercise, and that's when we basically say to them, okay, but here's the terms. I mean, here's what you have to pay us,
In order to reserve it.
Because you're gonna have to give us a guarantee, you're gonna have to tell us how many, 24 months ahead of time, you're gonna have to tell us how many ships you're gonna bring in, the days that you want it, and then here's the terms, because especially with somebody like Royal, it's outside their current transaction. The transaction they have is only in Cruise Terminal 3. So, I mean, these things, it's easy to, it's hard to visualize sometimes, but that's why you give yourself such long lead times in these, because
I just
they
know
also have
there's
to
a
book.
lot of competition between the cruise lines, and there just needs to be something built in that gives us some leverage if they start exercising their priority and then not bringing ships in.
Right. And believe me, we would at the time. At the time, we would certainly get minimum guarantees. It'll be a separate contract, or separate, probably more than likely an addendum to their current contract.
I was trying to pull it up on the fly, but I think that if they schedule, it gets built into their minimum guarantee. Now, if they don't come, that's parking problems, but they'll still be obligated on the minimum guarantee.
Which is what? How much money is that? Is the minimum
That's-
guarantee
It's the
enough?
passenger fees.
Right.
Which are what, $7.50 per passenger now? And how many passengers would there be on the ships they'd be bringing
Well,
into
like for instance,
Terminal
Oasis,
2?
we've run our
But they're,
number.
okay,
We've
but
run-
I'm talking about for Terminal 2.
Well, Disney's about 2,500, 24 something.
No, I'm talking
per-
about Carnival or Royal Caribbean.
Well,
the
Carnival's
ships
probably
they-
3,500 passengers.
So it's 3,500 times 750, which is what?
Times two.
Times two.
They go and they come back.
So,
It's $15.
What we do when we figure out a minimum guarantee is we go
Eric.
back and we say, here's the number of here's your capacity, here's the number of turns that you're talking
so
about.
that's $70,000 or so, right? If it's times 10,
What
if
times?
it's 3,500 times 10, it's 35,000, and it's both ways. So at max, it's $70,000. So would it ever be worth it to them to just pay somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000 and block
think it's more
Disney
than that,
from
isn't
using the terminal?
Well, there's other charges.
It's not a huge.
That's per trip.
Well, that's per weekend. It's per
I don't
trip.
think the
but-
port's ever had an experience where a cruise line has not we've fallen back to the minimum guarantee because they did not come on the cruises.
But have we had this kind of preferential right where if they don't come, then one of their competing
Yes.
cruise lines
They'll
gets
have
the
it.
terminal?
They'll have it in their agreements.
And they start taking reservations.
So that's $1,365,000 because you're talking 3,500 passengers, 3,500 times 7.5
they may not be as devious as.
How many weekends are you thinking about?
So I'm assuming half a year, 26 turns.
Okay.
That's $1,365,000.
So it's really not like week by week. It's
dates.
half a year at a time.
It's dates is really what it becomes. It's date specific. They're going to tell us, and we get that now. You understand? We get that right now from all the cruise lines. They're required in their contracts to give us their calendars. You know, either 2 years or 18 months in advance.
Well, I don't think the current management that we're working with at these cruise lines would do anything like this, but our contracts need to protect us.
Yeah, because something like that could happen. They start playing games. That's a good point.
I'd like to make a motion that we give Roger and his staff the authority to move forward on negotiating a contract with Magical Corporation.
I second that.
There's a motion and a second to go forward with C1. Is there any other discussion? Douglas, you had your hand up earlier. Did you want to say something?
No, I'm good.
He was just grabbing
I was
his
reaching
nuts.
for the-
Between Doug and Teddy, there's none left.
Mine went dark real quick. See, cashews are gone over here. Any other discussion? All in favor, signify by aye. Aye. Ayes have it, so ordered. Remarks related to agenda items? Anybody got something to say before we decide Merry Christmas? Motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second. To the second. We're now going to adjourn the meeting. It is now 9:23.